The average Japanese household spends about half of what an American family spends on groceries every week, and it comes down to 22 items you're wasting your money on without even realizing it. These items are stacked at eye level in your supermarket right now, marked up 2, 10, sometimes even 50 times higher than what the exact same food costs one shelf over, or almost nothing when made at home. Japanese families have been shopping this way for generations, and avoiding the same 22 items on your very next grocery shop will cut hundreds of dollars a month out of your bill, without a single coupon, without a warehouse club card, and without changing one meal your family eats. Once you see the full list, you will never look at your own grocery cart the same way again. I'm going to walk you through all 22 of them, including one item that most Americans think is a smart, cheap lunch, that Japanese families consider a complete waste of money, and another item in almost every American fridge that Japanese housewives see as the most expensive cut of the cheapest animal in the store. The first item Japanese families will never buy is the boneless, skinless chicken breast, the single most popular protein in the country. The exact same bird sold whole runs about $1.50 a pound, and the breast on its own runs closer to $7, all for a job that takes 5 minutes with a knife at home. Japanese kitchens have a word for the feeling behind this habit, matanai, which roughly means a regret at waste, and it applies to every part of the chicken that Americans throw away when they reach for the boneless, skinless tray. A Japanese housewife treats the whole chicken as the standard, and one bird becomes a rice bowl, a soup stock, a stir fry, and a lunch or two, with the bones simmered down into broth that would cost $4 a quart from a carton on the shelf. The bird is exactly the same, and the difference on the register is entirely for the convenience of having someone else butcher it for you. The chicken breast is everyday meat dressed up as premium, but the tray waiting for Americans at the deli counter is a far bigger illusion, and Japanese families will not touch it. Number 2. The pre-made sushi in the refrigerated case at the American grocery store is a product Japanese people would not call sushi at all. A real sushi chef in Japan, called a sushi shokunin, spends close to 10 years in training before he is allowed to shape rice for a paying customer, because the rice itself is the entire craft. None of that is happening in the deli case at the American supermarket. The rice has been refrigerated for hours, the fish was portioned in advance, and the California roll is filled with imitation crab that Japanese kitchens would consider a completely different food. A tray that costs somewhere between $8 and $15 at the deli case is closer to a rice sandwich than to anything a Japanese housewife would call sushi, and the rice, seaweed, and modest amount of fish it takes to make it at home run about a third of the price. The deli case sells Americans a tray dressed up as exotic, but the next item sits in almost every American pantry and gets marked up thousands of %, and it comes with a health scare on top. Number 3. A bottle of water that costs the manufacturer roughly 5 cents to produce sells at the register for around $2, a markup of about 4,000%. In most American cities, that bottle is coming out of the same reservoir as the tap water at home. A recent study found that the average liter of bottled water contains around 240,000 microscopic plastic particles. Researchers have separately detected microplastics throughout the human body, and bottled water is now understood to be one of the largest daily sources of exposure. Japan has a phrase, suirushui shinja, which roughly translates as tap water believers, and Japanese tap water is treated to a standard the entire country takes pride in. Even in a country that could easily afford bottled water, Japanese households almost never buy it, and the fridge in a Japanese home always has a permanent pitcher, usually of cold barley tea or filtered tap. A $30 water filter and a reusable stainless steel bottle replace hundreds of dollars a year of bottled water and remove the microplastic exposure at the same time. If the bottled water in the pantry is dressed up as premium hydration, the tray sitting in the refrigerated meat case is dressed up as convenience, and a former grocery store butcher will tell you never to buy it. Number 4. A pound of plain chicken breast at $5 becomes a pound of teriyaki marinated chicken at $8, a 60% markup for a marinade the store made for about 30 cents. Many of those pre-marinated cuts carry over 800 milligrams of sodium per serving, more than a third of your entire recommended daily limit. What former grocery store meat managers have been saying for years is that pre-marinated trays are frequently how the store moves cuts nearing their sell-by date. The strong flavor, the bright color, and the heavy salt all mask the smell and appearance of meat that would otherwise have to be discounted or thrown out. Japanese cooks have a homemade marinade tradition called tear, a mixture of soy sauce, mirin, sake, and ginger that lives in a jar in the fridge for weeks. The Japanese tear system exists to enhance a fresh cut, while the American pre-marinated system often exists to hide a tired one. 3 minutes of stirring soy sauce, olive oil, garlic, and honey together in a bowl replaces the entire pre-marinated section, with none of the mystery about what is in your food. The store hopes you cannot tell a fresh cut from a hidden one under the marinade, and it hopes even harder that you cannot tell an ordinary berry from a superfood once it has been put in the right kind of bag. Number 5. An 8-ounce bag of goji berries at a health-focused American grocer runs somewhere between $12 and $25 a pound. Blueberries, blackberries, and strawberries, which are nutritionally comparable by every serious measure, run about $4 a pound at the very same store. The FDA has never officially recognized or approved the term superfood, and it is not a scientific category at all, just a word that food marketers can put on any product they choose in order to justify a premium price. In China, where goji berries have been eaten for centuries as a matter of course, they are inexpensive and sold in bulk at any local market. In Japan, matcha, wakame, seaweed, and fermented soybeans called natto are eaten every day because they are ordinary foods, and the traditional Japanese diet, known as washoku, was added to the UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage List in 2013 for exactly this reason. Washoku has been delivering the health benefits that American marketers now call superfood benefits for centuries, without ever needing a label. The premium that American shoppers pay for anything labeled as a superfood is the cost of the packaging, the branding, and the sticker, rather than any measurable improvement in nutrition. The actual nutritional heavy hitters are the everyday foods already sitting in the produce, dairy, and grain aisles of the same store, at a fraction of the price. If the superfood aisle sells you a small bag for the price of a large one, the dairy case sells you the same trick in reverse, in a format nearly every American household buys without thinking twice about it. Number 6. A single-serve yogurt cup routinely costs somewhere between 2 and 5 times more per pound than the exact same yogurt in a large tub sitting one shelf over. A daily habit adds up to roughly $300 extra every year, spent entirely on plastic packaging that gets thrown out within seconds of opening. Japanese kitchens have a word for the household portioning ethic, bunryo, which assumes that dividing food into servings is a household task rather than a factory task. A Japanese kitchen keeps small glass containers on hand for exactly this purpose, and a large tub of plain yogurt gets scooped into small jars once at the beginning of the week, with each jar costing a fraction of the pre-packaged version and generating a fraction of the trash. The single-serve format is one of the highest margin categories in the entire dairy aisle, and the store depends on the American assumption that portion control has to come from packaging rather than from a spoon in a small container. $2 worth of small glass jars pays for itself in about 3 days of yogurt. And the yogurt inside is also fresher because the large tub sells faster and does not sit on the shelf for as long before it reaches the household. The dairy case is only one aisle where Japanese shoppers refuse to pay for what the store adds to the food, and the fish counter is where the American approach differs from the Japanese one about as much as any category in the store. Number 7. A whole fish at the supermarket often runs $3 to $5 a pound, while the same fish in pre-cut fillet form 2 shelves over runs $12 to $18 a pound. The fillets are also consistently days older than the whole fish, because they were cut in advance and packaged for a longer shelf life on the styrofoam tray. Japanese fish shopping is a relationship rather than a transaction, and the neighborhood fish shop, called a sakanaya, is where a Japanese cook asks the fishmonger to butcher the fish in front of them and then takes the head, bones, and trim home in a separate bag to make dashi, which is the foundational stock of the entire cuisine. The Japanese principle of ichigyozamai, which means doing one thing completely, extends to the fish counter, where the cutting is the fishmonger's craft rather than the food scientist's. The styrofoam tray at the American supermarket removes the craftsman and adds the middleman. The fillet is priced against the American assumption that a whole fish is intimidating, when in reality, almost every supermarket seafood counter will still butterfly, fillet, or scale a whole fish at no additional charge if a customer asks politely, and almost no American shopper ever thinks to ask. The styrofoam fish tray solves a problem Japanese kitchens do not have, and the flavored creamer sitting a few aisles over solves a problem that no one has at all. Number 8. A bottle of French vanilla flavored coffee creamer contains no actual vanilla, and the ingredient list on the back of the bottle runs to partially hydrogenated soybean oil, corn syrup solids, sodium caseinate, dipotassium phosphate, and artificial flavors. A daily habit runs about $100 a year for a product that is essentially industrial syrup dressed up in a plastic bottle. Japanese food culture places a heavy emphasis on tenin, which means natural or pure, particularly when it comes to beverages. Coffee in Japan is drunk black or with a small splash of fresh milk, and the idea of adding a bottle of flavored liquid to a cup of coffee reads as bizarre in a food culture built around ingredient integrity. When Japanese coffee drinkers do sweeten their coffee, they use a small amount of real sugar and real cream, both of which they can name and recognize on site. A Japanese cook brewing coffee often uses a Hario dripper with filtered water and a timed pour, treated with something close to the same care as brewing tea, and adding vanilla syrup to that cup would defeat the entire point of brewing it. A splash of whole milk and a quarter teaspoon of real vanilla extract at home replaces every bottle in the creamer section for the cost of pennies per cup, and the coffee itself actually tastes like coffee. The creamer aisle sells industrial syrup as luxury, but the aisle with the highest markup in the entire store is the one lined with tiny glass bottles that most families never think to question. Number 9. A small jar of McCormick oregano at a regular American supermarket runs around $3.49. The same amount of oregano at an Indian or Middle Eastern grocery store runs around 37 cents, which is close to a 1,000% markup on the exact same spice, often imported from the same country by the same distributor. What makes it worse is that the supermarket jar has typically been sitting on the shelf for months and has lost most of its flavor and aroma long before it was ever purchased. Japanese shoppers do the same thing across the ocean with a chain called Daiso, which is the largest of the 100-yen store chains, known as Hayakuen Ten. Japanese families buy salt, sugar, dried spices, sesame seeds, and everyday pantry staples at Daiso without any brand embarrassment because the value is obvious, and the product is often identical to what the regular supermarket sells at 4 times the price. The American equivalent is the dollar store, the warehouse club, or any Indian, Middle Eastern, or Asian grocery. Those shops move product fast, which means the spices are actually fresh instead of stale. Buying whole spices in bulk from an ethnic market and storing them in airtight jars at home produces stronger flavor and lower cost at the same time. And once you make that switch, the supermarket spice aisle becomes a section you walk past without slowing down. The spice aisle overcharges you for a product that has been sitting still, but the bakery at the front of the store overcharges you for a product that is not really baking there at all. Number 10. The warm smell of fresh bread that hits you the moment you walk into the front of an American supermarket is often not coming from any real baking. Many major grocery chains use dedicated scent machines that release synthetic bakery aroma into the air throughout the day, whether anything is being baked on site or not, and much of the actual product in the bakery case arrives already baked, or partly baked from a central facility and simply gets finished in store. According to the Scent Marketing Institute, when the artificial scent of fresh bread was piped through a grocery store, bakery sales tripled. The profit margin on in-store bakery items runs close to 60%, which is one of the highest margins anywhere in the entire building. Japanese consumer guides have been warning shoppers about this phenomenon for years, and there is an informal name for it in Japanese home economics writing, Naioi no Wana, which translates as the scent trap. The traditional Japanese small neighborhood bakery, called a panya, is a completely separate specialist shop, and any Japanese shopper who actually wants a pastry goes to the panya because the panya is actually baking on the premises. The day-old bakery discount rack at most American supermarkets sells the same items at half the price, and a $2 box of brownie mix at home produces about the same amount of dessert as a $12 bakery tray. The bakery uses scent to trick the nose, but the freezer aisle uses packaging to trick the eye, and the health-minded shopper is the easiest target of all. Number 11. A pre-portioned frozen smoothie pack routinely costs twice what the equivalent frozen fruit and vegetables cost when bought separately in larger bags, and many of the packs include fillers, added sugars, and lower quality frozen blends that defeat the entire point of making a fresh smoothie in the first place. Japanese food culture places heavy emphasis on shun, which is the concept of eating produce at the peak of its seasonal moment. A Japanese cook will pay a premium for shun strawberries in April and refuse them entirely in November because the fruit out of season is understood to be nutritionally and financially inferior. When Japanese kitchens do freeze fruit, they freeze it whole, at its peak, in reusable containers, at home. The pre-portioned smoothie pack is a Western marketing innovation aimed at the American shopper who wants the language of health without the arithmetic of it. A $5 bag of frozen mixed berries and a banana produce the same smoothie that an $8 smoothie pack does, without any of the fillers and with a lot more actual fruit going into the blender. Making up a batch of your own smoothie packs at home takes about 10 minutes on a Sunday afternoon and saves anywhere from 40 to 60% on every smoothie you make for the rest of the month. The smoothie pack sells the language of health for double the price, but the deli counter sells something that the World Health Organization has directly linked to actual harm, and it sits in almost every American refrigerator. Number 12. Sliced deli meat runs $10 to $15 a pound for what is often reformed, cured, and preserved meat scraps that have been pressed back together into a loaf shape. The World Health Organization classified processed meat as a Group 1 carcinogen in 2015, which is the same classification as tobacco, smoke, and asbestos. And it means there is sufficient evidence in humans that processed meat causes cancer, specifically colorectal cancer. Japanese food culture treats processed meat, called kakuniku, with roughly the same suspicion that American parents treat candy for breakfast. It is not a category that meaningfully appears in traditional Japanese home cooking at all. The Japanese lunchbox, the bento, is built around a small piece of fresh cooked protein, often a grilled fish, a rolled Japanese omelet called tamagoyaki, or a piece of chicken that was cooked the night before or that same morning from a whole cut of meat. Deli meat is one of the highest margin refrigerated categories in the American supermarket, and the entire lunch meat industry depends on the American assumption that sandwich protein has to come pre-sliced from a plastic package. A whole roast chicken carved and refrigerated on a Sunday afternoon produces a week of sandwiches at a fraction of the deli price, with none of the preservatives. If the deli meat is the processed shortcut Americans reach for at lunch, the boxed mix in the baking aisle is the processed shortcut Americans reach for on a birthday, and the arithmetic on it is somehow even worse. Number 13. A $2 box of brownie mix contains roughly 40 cents worth of flour, sugar, cocoa, and salt, along with a handful of preservatives and stabilizers to make sure the mix will sit on the shelf for 18 months without going stale. A bakery tray of brownies for $12 can be made at home from those same 40 cents of pantry staples, plus a couple of eggs and a stick of butter, for a total cost of about $2. The same math holds across pancake mix, cake mix, muffin mix, and cornbread mix. Japanese home cooking has a strong tezakuri tradition, which means handmade at home, and Japanese sweets, called okashi, are either purchased from a specialist confectioner or made from scratch at home, with no middle category of factory boxed mix in between. The Japanese pantry is minimal but functional, holding flour, sugar, salt, baking soda, oil, and eggs. And when something is baked, it is baked from those ingredients directly rather than from a box that contains the same ingredients pre-measured with preservatives added. The saving is not just financial either, because the flavor of a scratch-baked brownie is meaningfully better than the boxed version, and the ingredient list is short enough to read out loud without stopping. The baking aisle sells you your own pantry back at a markup, but the beverage aisle sells you sugar water at the price of medicine, and the sugar loads on the label are worse than most parents realize. Number 14. A single can of a major American energy drink can contain up to 78 grams of sugar in one serving, which works out to about 20 teaspoons in a single can. The recommended daily sugar limit is 24 grams for women and 36 grams for men, which means one can of an American energy drink contains roughly 3 times the daily sugar limit for a woman. A daily habit runs over $1,300 a year, spent on a product that most credible health studies now link to weight gain, increased risk of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and gout. Japan actually invented the modern energy drink category with a product called Lipovitan D in 1962, but the Japanese version is a 100 milliliter bottle, which is about 3 ounces, containing actual functional ingredients like taurine and B vitamins, and it is taken as a medicinal shot rather than a casual all-day beverage. Japanese caffeine culture is called oshabunka, or tea culture, and the caffeine most Japanese people consume comes from green tea, hojicha, or oolong rather than from syrup in a can. The 16-ounce American reformulation, marketed as a lifestyle drink and loaded with sugar and artificial flavors, is a completely different product from Lipovitan D that happens to share the same category name. If the energy drink is sold as a lifestyle in a can, the produce aisle sells the same trick in a plastic tray, and Japanese kitchens have a name for the tax it charges you. Number 15. A whole watermelon at almost any American supermarket runs around $4, and a small container of pre-cut watermelon half its size runs closer to $7. Pre-cut produce across the entire produce section runs somewhere between 40% and 100% more per ounce than the whole version in exchange for about 90 seconds of knife work per item. Japanese home economics writing has a phrase for this markup, karimize, which roughly translates as the cutting tax, and Japanese cooks have been calling it out as an unnecessary drain on the household budget for decades. A small santoku knife lives on the counter in almost every Japanese kitchen, and the 90 seconds it takes to cube a melon, slice an onion, or dice a bell pepper is understood to be part of cooking rather than a chore to hire out. The moment produce is cut, it also begins losing nutrients and drying out under the fluorescent lights of the store, which means the pre-cut tray is worse food at a higher price than the whole version sitting one shelf over. 20 minutes of Sunday afternoon meal prep, done in front of a Netflix show, replaces the entire pre-cut section for the week and cuts the produce budget nearly in half. The store charges a cutting tax on the produce aisle, and it charges a mixing tax on the shelf just above it, in a category almost every American household refills every month. Number 16. A bottle of ranch or Italian dressing at the American supermarket runs somewhere between $4 and $6 for what is essentially oil, vinegar, and seasoning, stabilized with gums and preservatives so that it can sit on a shelf for a year and a half without separating. The same volume of dressing made at home costs about 30 cents in ingredients and takes about 90 seconds of whisking. Japanese kitchens make their own dressings by default, and one of the most common is called gomadere, or sesame dressing, which combines toasted sesame, soy sauce, rice vinegar, a little sugar, and sometimes Japanese mayonnaise, whisked together in under a minute. The Japanese pantry is built around a small number of high-quality condiments, including soy sauce, rice vinegar, mirin, sesame oil, and miso, and any combination of 2 or 3 of them produces a dressing that would be sold in a bottle in America for $6. A jar with a tight lid and a whisk replace the entire salad dressing section forever, and the fresh homemade version tastes considerably better than anything that has been sitting in a bottle for a year with a preservative in it. If the bottled dressing charges a mixing tax, the pre-shredded cheese charges a grating tax, and the store hides something in the bag that would never end up on a fresh block. Number 17. Pre-shredded cheese in the plastic bag runs anywhere from 25 to 40% more per pound than the same cheese in block form sitting one shelf over. The bag also contains anti-caking agents, usually cellulose powder or potato starch, and sometimes natamycin, all added so that the shreds do not stick together in the package. Those additives measurably interfere with how the cheese melts, and they are ingredients no home cook would ever add to a dish on purpose. Cheese in Japanese cooking is treated as a specialty ingredient rather than a daily staple, called chiazu as a loanword from English, and when Japanese kitchens do use it, they buy a fresh block and grate it themselves in the moment. The principle behind that habit is the same principle that runs through the entire Japanese approach to ingredients, which is that food should be recognizable and unaltered. A block of cheese and a hand grater produce fresher, cheaper, better melting cheese in about 30 seconds, and the block itself lasts weeks longer in the fridge than the shredded bag does. The bag is one of the highest margin dairy items in the store, and the store depends on the American shopper accepting that grating cheese is a task worth paying someone else to do. The cheese bag is a small daily tax, but the cereal box in the middle of the store is a monthly one, and the reason the name on the box costs double what the identical product next to it costs is one of the oldest tricks in retail. Number 18. A name brand box of cereal at the American supermarket often runs somewhere between $6 and $8, while the store brand version of the same formula, often produced in the exact same factory by the exact same manufacturer, runs closer to $3. A single serving of many of the most popular American cereals contains more sugar than a Japanese dessert, and cereal in general has been one of the fastest rising categories in American grocery prices over the last few years. The traditional Japanese breakfast is called asagohan, which literally means morning rice, and it consists of steamed rice, a small bowl of miso soup, a piece of grilled fish, some pickled vegetables, and a cup of green tea. It is a protein and fiber-forward meal that leaves the eater satisfied for hours, with almost no sugar at any point in the meal. The American cereal aisle exists because the industry successfully marketed sugar as breakfast in the middle of the 20th century, and the name brands charge a premium for nostalgia and cartoon mascots rather than for any nutritional advantage. Blind taste tests consistently show that most people cannot tell the name brand from the store brand version, and when they can, the preference is often the other way around. If the cereal box overcharges you for a cartoon on the front, the snack aisle overcharges you for the shape of the package around the food, and families with children pay this tax every single week. Number 19. A box of individually wrapped goldfish crackers, meaning the little packs of about 3 bites each, runs about $9 for 10 ounces of crackers. A family-sized bag of the exact same crackers runs about $4.50 for 30 ounces. That works out to close to a 600% markup per ounce, entirely for the packaging of putting the same crackers into smaller bags. A family that relies on single-serve snacks throws away over $800 a year compared to a family that buys in bulk and portions at home, which is close to a car payment spent on plastic wrappers. Japanese school children carry snacks in small, compartmented, reusable containers called bento bako, portioned at home from a large bag the night before. The assumption in a Japanese household is that portioning is a household task, and that a small one-time investment in reusable containers pays for itself within a month. The American assumption that portion control has to come from single-serve packaging is one of the most profitable illusions in the entire snack aisle. A $5 set of reusable snack containers replaces the entire single-serve category permanently, and the snacks inside are exactly the same crackers, cookies, and pretzels that the family was buying before. If the snack aisle overcharges for the size of the bag, the beverage cooler overcharges for the fact that someone else brewed the tea, and the markup runs into the thousands of %. Number 20. A cold brew from a major American coffee chain runs about $5 a cup, and the same coffee brewed at home from a 40-ounce container of ground coffee, which yields roughly 100 cups, runs about 10 cents per cup. That is a markup of close to 5,000% on a product that takes about 5 minutes of prep the night before. The same math holds for the bottled iced coffee and iced tea sitting in the refrigerated case at the front of the store, which sells for $3 or $4 a bottle for tea that costs pennies per liter to brew at home. Every Japanese fridge, from the smallest apartment kitchen to the largest condo, has a permanent pitcher of tea in it, most commonly mugicha, which is a roasted barley tea drunk cold as the default household summer beverage. In winter, the pitcher rotates to hojicha or oolong. It is a permanent staple that costs almost nothing per liter to brew and is treated the same way American families treat pitchers of iced water. The idea of paying $3 for a bottle of iced tea in Japan would be treated the same way most Americans would treat paying $3 for a bottle of tap water. A pitcher, a box of tea bags, and 5 minutes of prep replace the entire bottled coffee and tea section forever. The bottled coffee sells you convenience at a 5,000% markup, and the produce aisle has one more version of the same trick, wrapped in plastic and sold to Americans who thought they were making a healthy choice. Number 21. A pre-washed bagged salad kit runs up to $10 a pound for lettuce that is often already wilting the day it leaves the store, and it typically spoils within 3 days of purchase. A meaningful portion of every bag ends up in the trash before it can be eaten, which means the effective price per eaten serving is often double the sticker price on the shelf. Japanese food culture places a heavy emphasis on shinsen-shugi, which translates roughly as the freshness principle, and Japanese cooks buy leafy greens the day they will be eaten from the outer perimeter of the store and wash them at home in cold water in a small bowl. The moment lettuce is chopped, washed, and sealed with the modified atmosphere packaging that keeps it looking fresh on the shelf, it begins a rapid decline that no amount of packaging can stop. A whole head of romaine in 30 seconds under running water replaced the entire salad kit section for a fraction of the price, and the fresh head lasts about 3 times longer in the fridge than the bag does. The salad on the plate is exactly the same salad, and the difference is entirely in whether you paid $10 to have someone else wash the leaves for you. Every trick in this video comes back to the same underlying pattern, and the final item is the one that reveals what has been going on across the entire supermarket all along. Number 22. A jar of Keto labeled peanut butter at the American health food aisle runs $11, and its ingredient list reads peanuts, salt. A jar of regular peanut butter with the same 2 ingredients runs about $3.50. The markup is entirely for the label on the front of the jar. The paleo-approved crackers made from almond, flour, and sea salt can be made at home from 2 ingredients for about a quarter of the shelf price. The specialty diet food category has grown over 40% in the last 2 years, and most of that growth is ordinary food repackaged with a diet buzzword like keto, paleo, or Whole30. The traditional Japanese diet is called Shizen Shoku, which means natural whole food, and it is built around fish, rice, vegetables, tofu, seaweed, fermented foods, and green tea. That set of ingredients naturally satisfies most of the American diet frameworks by centuries, without needing any special sticker to say so on the packaging. When food is genuinely healthy, it does not need a marketing label on the front to prove it, and the moment a product carries one, the shopper is being asked to pay a premium for the packaging rather than for the food itself. Every one of the 22 items in this video exists because the store has found a way to sell you an extra layer around food you could buy without that layer, and the Japanese refusal to buy that extra layer is the entire reason a Japanese cart ends up costing so much less than an American one. There you have it, 22 things Japanese shoppers refuse to put in the cart. Start with just 3 of them on your very next shop, and by the end of the month, the difference at the register will be obvious. And let me know your thoughts in the comments. Which of these 22 are you going to leave on the shelf first, and whether there is one you are already refusing to buy? And check the video that is appearing on your screen for more frugal tricks from the Japanese.